800-year-old Vampire King spat in the face of a 30-year-old waitress because her nail polish was chipped. She broke his jaw with one punch in front of 50 customers. 3 months later, he proposed with a $2 million ruby ring. Why? Because her blood carried the royal gene missing for 3 decades, the only thing that could save the vampire race from extinction. The secret about her mother would bring down the Elder Council. This is how Lyra Ashenvale went from a worthless waitress to the queen who saved an entire species. The clock above the kitchen door read 2:47 a.m. when Lyra Ashenvale finally untied her apron. Her hands moved on autopilot, fingers working the knot loose after 16 hours of carrying plates and forcing smiles. The fabric was damp with dishwater and sweat. It always was by the end of a double shift. The celestial restaurant sat empty now, silent except for the hum of industrial refrigerators and the distant clatter of Luis washing the last of the pans. The dining room still smelled like rosemary and burnt sugar from tonight's special, duck confit with blackberry reduction. A dish that cost more than Lyra made in a day. She folded the apron slowly, precisely, the way she did everything. Each corner aligned, each crease exact. Small rituals of control in a life that had spiraled beyond her grasp 3 years ago. Her reflection stared back from the chrome napkin dispenser on the server station. 30 years old, dark circles under gray eyes that used to sparkle. Hair pulled back so tight it gave her headaches. She looked tired. She always looked tired. The nail on her right index finger caught her attention, a chip in the burgundy polish she'd applied 4 days ago. She'd meant to fix it, kept meaning to, but there was never time between the morning shift at Celestial and the evening shift that bled into early morning. Never time for the small vanities that used to matter. Her phone buzzed, a text from her father. Took my medication. Don't worry about me, sweetheart. Focus on you. Lyra's throat tightened. He always said that. Don't worry, as if she could simply turn off 3 decades of caring. As if his heart condition was something that could be ignored because he wanted to spare her the burden. She typed back quickly. I sent the money for next month's prescriptions. Should be in your account tomorrow. Love you, Dad. The money. Always the money. Not because she was in debt. Lyra Ashenvale owed no one, and she kept it that way through sheer force of will, but because everything she earned went somewhere else. To her father's medications. To the small house in Nebraska where he lived alone. To the memory of a man who'd taught her that dignity didn't require wealth. She grabbed her coat from her locker. A thrift store find, 3 years old, with a torn lining she'd sewn back together twice. It would do for another winter. Everything would do for another season, another year, another lifetime, if necessary. Lyra, you heading out? Maria appeared from the kitchen, still in her prep chef whites. She was younger than Lyra by 5 years, but her eyes held the same exhaustion. Different reasons. Same weight. Double tomorrow starts at 10, Lyra said. I should sleep. Should, ma'am. Maria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Girl, when's the last time you did something for yourself? I mean, really, when's the last time you went on a date? Had fun? Lyra's fingers tightened on her coat. I'm fine, Maria. You're 30, not 90. David wouldn't want you to. Don't. The word came out sharper than intended. Lyra softened it with a smile that felt like glass breaking. I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine, really. Maria studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but the offer stands. My cousin Jorge, he's a good guy. Owns a good night, Maria. Lyra walked out before the conversation could continue, before Maria could see the way her hands shook, before anyone could witness the crack in the armor she'd built so carefully around herself. The street was empty. Cold October wind bit through her coat. She pulled it tighter and started the 12-block walk to her apartment. The subway would have been faster, but walking saved $3. $3 was $3. She thought about David as she walked. She always did on nights like this, nights when the cold seeped into her bones and reminded her of the hospital, of holding his hand while machines beeped and nurses spoke in hushed tones about comfort care, of watching the strongest man she'd ever known wither to nothing in 6 brutal months. 3 years since he'd died. 3 years since she'd buried her heart alongside him in the cemetery on Fletcher Street. 3 years of people like Maria telling her to move on, to live again, to open herself up to the possibility of happiness. They didn't understand. Couldn't. Grief wasn't something you moved on from. It was something you learned to carry. And Lyra had become very good at carrying heavy things. Her apartment was dark when she arrived. A studio on the 4th floor of a building that had seen better decades. The radiator clanked but never quite produced enough heat. The shower drained slowly. The window stuck. It was home. She kicked off her shoes, the soles worn thin, the heel of the right one starting to separate. Made a mental note to use superglue tomorrow. Collapsed onto her bed without changing clothes. Stared at the ceiling where a water stain had formed a shape that almost looked like a bird in flight. Sleep came eventually, dreamless and dark. The morning shift began the same way it always did. Lyra arrived at 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes early, changed into her uniform in the employee bathroom, a black dress that had faded to charcoal, sensible flats she'd rolled twice. Checked her appearance in the mirror. Hair neat, face clean, nails filed short because long ones got in the way of work. The chip in the polish on her index finger stared back at her. She should fix it. She would fix it. Later. Bernard, the floor manager, was already in position by the host stand. 45 years old, thinning hair slicked back, perpetually sweating even though the restaurant kept the temperature at a crisp 68 degrees. He ran the Celestial with the nervous energy of a man constantly afraid of losing his job. Lyra, he nodded, you're on section 7 tonight. We have a VIP reservation at 8, table 12. VIP? Very important. Bernard's voice dropped to a whisper. As in, don't screw this up. The gentleman specifically requested our best server in the quietest table. Lyra had been working at Celestial for 6 years. 6 years of being reliable. 6 years of never calling in sick, never complaining, never causing problems. She'd earned the title of best server through sheer endurance. I'll take care of it, she said. The day crawled by in a blur of orders and demands. A businessman who sent back his steak 3 times. A woman who claimed to be allergic to everything except the most expensive items on the menu. A couple celebrating their anniversary who left a 15% tip and seemed to think they were being generous. By 8 p.m., Lyra's feet ached. Her lower back throbbed. The smile she wore felt painted on. And then he walked in. The room didn't go quiet, not exactly, but the energy shifted. Conversations continued, but softer. Glances flickered toward the entrance and quickly away, as if looking too long might be dangerous. He was tall, 6'4" at least, built like something carved from marble and brought to life by a sculptor who understood both beauty and brutality. Dark hair swept back from a face too perfect to be entirely human. Sharp jaw, sharper cheekbones, eyes the color of smoke and steel. His suit probably cost more than Lyra made in a year. Custom tailored, midnight black with subtle pinstripes that caught the light when he moved. Cufflinks that glinted like captured stars. Bernard appeared at Lyra's elbow, practically vibrating with anxiety. That's him, he hissed. Table 12, be perfect. Smile. Don't speak unless spoken to. This man could buy this restaurant with his pocket change. Lyra took a breath, straightened her shoulders, picked up a menu, and walked toward table 12 with her professional smile firmly in place. The man didn't look up as she approached. He was studying his phone with the focused intensity of someone accustomed to having the world wait on his convenience. Good evening, sir. Welcome to Celestial. My name is Lyra, and I'll be... Water. Still, not sparkling. Lemon, no ice. His voice cut through her introduction like a blade through silk. Cold, precise, accented with something old world that she couldn't quite place. British, perhaps, but not quite. Something older. Of course. And for your meal, may I recommend... I'll have the duck, rare. If your chef overcooks it, I'll know. He still hadn't looked at her. Lyra's smile tightened. The duck is our specialty. I'm confident you'll... That will be all. Dismissal. Complete and absolute. She might as well have been a piece of furniture. Lyra walked away, jaw clenched. She'd dealt with rude customers before. Rich men who thought their money bought them the right to treat service staff like servants. With practiced care, he didn't acknowledge it. She put in his order, brought his water, set it down with practiced care. He didn't acknowledge her existence. 20 minutes later, she returned with his duck. The kitchen had outdone themselves. Perfectly seared skin, meat cooked to exactly rare, garnished with microgreens and the blackberry reduction that made the dish famous. Lyra set the plate down gently. Your duck, sir. Prepared exactly to... His hand shot out. Fast. Impossibly fast. He caught her wrist before she could step back. She froze. His eyes finally met hers. Gray. Pale gray that seemed to reflect light rather than absorb it. Cold enough to burn. Do you think, he said softly, that I want food touched by those hands? The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Sir? Lyra's voice came out steady despite the ice spreading through her chest. He lifted her hand, turned it over with clinical precision. examined her fingers like a jeweler inspecting flawed diamonds. "Look at your nails." She did, saw what he saw, the chip in her polish, the cuticles dry from constant hand-washing, the small calluses from carrying heavy trays, evidence of a life lived in service, evidence of poverty. I, she tried to pull her hand back. His grip tightened, not painfully, but unyielding. "Chipped polish," he continued, his voice carrying across the dining room now. Heads turned, conversations died. "Dirt beneath the cuticles, rough skin, and you presume to handle food meant for my table." Heat flooded Lyra's face. Shame and rage mixed into something molten. "I wash my hands thoroughly, sir. Our hygiene standards—" "This establishment has fallen far." He released her wrist with a flick of disgust. "When I last dined here, there was dignity, class. Now you employ this." The word hung in the air. This. Not her, not a person. This. Bernard materialized like an anxious ghost. "Mr. Nightshade, I am so terribly sorry. We had no idea that—" "Save your excuses." The man, Nightshade, didn't even glance at Bernard. His eyes stayed locked on Lyra. "I expected better. I was disappointed." Something inside Lyra cracked. She'd endured so much. 3 years of grinding through grief. 6 years of being invisible. 30 years of being told through 1,000 small cuts that she wasn't quite good enough. That she needed to try harder, be better, smile more, want less. And now this arrogant stranger reducing her to the state of her fingernails, making a spectacle of her poverty, humiliating her in front of the entire restaurant because he could. "I apologize," she heard herself say, "that my financial situation is such an inconvenience to your dining experience." Bernard made a strangled sound. Nightshade's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "I said," and Lyra's voice rang clear now, years of silence breaking like a dam, "I'm sorry that I'm poor. I'm sorry that I work 16-hour shifts and don't have time for manicures. Would you prefer I starve so my hands meet your standards before I serve your duck?" A woman at table 3 gasped. Nightshade rose from his chair, slowly, deliberately, every movement controlled. When he stood to his full height, he seemed to fill the room. The shadows around him deepened, as if darkness itself gravitated toward him. He walked toward her, each step measured, predatory. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs, but she didn't back away. Couldn't, wouldn't. He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could smell him, something dark and rich like aged leather in winter nights, close enough to see that his pupils were doing something strange, expanding and contracting, like a cat's. "You have no idea," he said softly, dangerously, "who you're speaking to." "Someone with impeccable manners," Lyra shot back. "Clearly." His hand moved, fast, so fast she barely registered the motion. For a heartbeat, she thought he might strike her. Her body tensed, preparing for the blow. Instead, he did something worse. He spat. The saliva hit her cheek, warm, wet. It trailed down toward her jaw, and the humiliation of it was so immediate, so visceral that Lyra's entire world narrowed to that single sensation. The dining room erupted in shocked murmurs. Bernard was babbling something. Apologies, excuses, already reaching for her arm to pull her away, to remove the problem, to protect the important customer from the consequences of his cruelty. But Lyra wasn't thinking anymore. She was moving. Her right hand, the one with the chipped nail polish, the one with calluses from carrying trays for 8 hours straight, the one that had held her dying husband's hand until his last breath, closed into a fist, and she drove it straight into the arrogant bastard's perfect jaw. The crack echoed through the restaurant like a gunshot. Nightshade's head snapped to the side. He staggered backward, caught himself against the table. His hand went to his jaw, and even through her fury and horror, and the adrenaline singing through her veins, Lyra saw the shock in his eyes. Pure, undiluted shock. She'd hit him. She'd actually hit him. "Get out." Bernard's voice shook. "Get out right now. You're fired. Oh God, Mr. Nightshade, I am so sorry. We'll call the police. We'll press charges. This is completely unacceptable." But Lyra was already moving, already ripping off her apron and throwing it on the floor. Tears blurred her vision as she pushed through the kitchen doors, past Luis at the grill, who stared at her open-mouthed, past the dishwashing station, toward the employee area where her coat and purse waited. She was ruined, completely ruined. She'd never get another job in this city, not after assaulting a customer. It didn't matter that he'd spat on her. Didn't matter that he'd humiliated her first. She was the employee, the nobody, the nothing, and he, whoever missed her. Nightshade was clearly somebody. Lyra's hands shook as she grabbed her things. The termination was immediate. No final paycheck, no reference. Nothing. She was wiping at her cheek, at the spit still cooling on her skin, when she heard footsteps behind her. "Please," she said without turning around, "just let me leave. I'm already gone. I won't." That was inadvisable. His voice. That cold, precise voice. Lyra spun around, her back hitting the lockers. He was standing in the doorway of the employee area, his hand still pressed to his jaw. In the harsh fluorescent lighting, he looked different, sharper, more dangerous. His eyes caught the light wrong, reflected it back with a silvery sheen that made her stomach drop. "Stay away from me," she said. "I'm leaving. Just please, I've lost enough." He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You broke my jaw." "I doubt that." But even as she said it, she remembered the sound, the feel of impact traveling up her arm. His lips quirked, just barely. The movement made him wince. "No, you actually did." He dropped his hand, and Lyra saw his jaw shift. Shift and realign, the bone moving beneath skin. And then it was straight again. Perfect. Healed. "I haven't had a broken bone," he said quietly, "in 300 years. 300 years. The words hung in the air between them. Impossible words. Insane words. Lyra pressed harder against the lockers, her coat clutched to her chest like a shield. "You're crazy." "Am I?" He took a step closer. The shadows in the room seemed to deepen. "Tell me, Lyra. Yes, I know your name. I can hear it on that ridiculous name tag in your purse. When have you ever hit someone that hard before?" "I've never." She stopped. Because it was true. She'd never hit anyone. Not in self-defense classes, not in anger, never. She was 5'6" and chronically exhausted and surviving on protein bars in spite. She shouldn't have been able to crack a dinner roll, let alone break a jaw. "You're stronger than you know," he said quietly, which makes the situation considerably more complicated. "I don't understand." "No, you wouldn't." He was close now. Too close. But somehow Lyra found she wasn't afraid anymore. Or rather, she was. But it was a different kind of fear. Not of violence. Of vertigo. Like standing at the edge of a cliff and feeling the pull of the void. "Tell me about your mother." The question was so unexpected that Lyra actually laughed. It came out bitter and broken. "My mother? She died when I was 5. Why? How did she die? A car accident, or—" Lyra frowned. The memory was hazy, worn smooth by time, and her father's reluctance to discuss it. "They said it was a car accident. I don't remember much." "Did your father ever tell you what your mother was before she met him?" "She was a teacher. What does this have to—" "A teacher." His smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "Of course, how very human." He reached out, and before Lyra could flinch away, his fingers brushed her cheek. Right where he'd spat on her. His touch was cold. Not unpleasantly so, but definitely not human warm. When he pulled back, his fingertips glistened. "You wiped my saliva off with your hand," he said. "Rubbed it into your skin. I was upset. I wasn't thinking. And now you're not burning, not convulsing, not dying." His eyes searched hers. "You should be." The room tilted. "Vampire saliva," he continued, his voice clinical now, "is toxic to humans. Even a trace amount on broken skin would cause excruciating pain. Paralysis, eventually death if untreated." He gestured to her hand. "I can smell the paper cut on your thumb from this morning." Lyra looked down, saw the small cut she had gotten opening a cardboard box. Barely visible, already scabbing over. "Vampire," she whispered. "Yes." "You're saying you're a vampire, 8 centuries old, king of the northern bloodlines, sovereign of the night court." He said it matter-of-factly, as if he were reciting his job title at a networking event. "And you, Lyra Ashenvale, are something that shouldn't exist." The lockers felt cold against her back. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere in the kitchen, Luis was still washing dishes. "No," Lyra said. "No, that's not. Vampires aren't." "We are. We have been for millennia." He leaned in, and his breath, cool and oddly sweet, feathered across her face. "You're half human and half something else. Something with our strength, our resilience. But you've been living as a human your whole life, completely unaware." Her knees buckled. She would have fallen if his hand hadn't shot out, catching her elbow with inhuman speed. "This is crazy," she managed. I'm crazy. I hit you, and now I'm having a breakdown in the back of a restaurant, and you're having a revelation. His grip on her elbow was firm, but surprisingly gentle, and a rather inconvenient one, I'll admit. When I came to this establishment tonight, I was expecting mediocre cuisine and adequate service. Instead, I found you. His jaw tightened, and I treated you abominably. You spat on me. I did, and you retaliated appropriately. There was something almost like respect in his voice. Now I am Caspian Nightshade, and everything I told you is true. I have lived for 8 centuries, and in that time, I have become accustomed to a certain standard, to being obeyed without question, to having my cruelty met with fear rather than resistance. His thumb traced a small circle on her elbow, and Lyra's breath caught. You surprised me, impressed me, and made me realize how deeply I'd forgotten what it means to be challenged. You're saying you're a vampire king, Lyra said slowly. And I'm what? Part vampire? I don't know what you are, not yet, but I intend to find out. His expression grew serious. Because if you're what I suspect, if your mother was one of us and somehow hid her nature, lived among humans, bore a child with one, then you're unique, unprecedented, and very, very valuable. The word valuable made Lyra's stomach turn. I'm not a thing to be collected. No, you're not. His expression softened, just slightly. You're a woman who's been fighting to survive, who's been beaten down by circumstances and cruelty, who should have broken 1,000 times over but somehow remained standing. He released her elbow and stepped back, giving her space. I wronged you tonight, publicly and viciously. So I'm going to do something I haven't done in a very, very long time. What? I'm going to make it right. Before Lyra could ask what he meant, Caspian turned and walked back toward the dining room. His posture was different now, straighter, more regal, every inch the king he claimed to be. Lyra followed without thinking, her coat still clutched in white-knuckled hands. The dining room fell silent when Caspian re-entered. Bernard was at table 12, frantically dabbing at the tablecloth. The other diners were trying to pretend they weren't staring, failing miserably. Caspian walked to the center of the room, stopped, and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner. I owe this establishment, and all of you, an apology for my appalling behavior this evening. His eyes swept the room. The server I mistreated, Lyra Ashenvale, acted with far more grace and dignity than I deserved. My actions were inexcusable. My words were beneath contempt, and her response was not only justified but restrained, given the circumstances. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Bernard's mouth hung open. Furthermore, Caspian continued, I am formally extending an offer of employment to Miss Ashenvale as my personal assistant. The salary will be $300,000 annually, with full benefits, housing provided, and an immediate signing bonus to cover any outstanding obligations she may have. Lyra's coat slipped from her fingers and puddled on the floor. $300,000. She made $23,000 a year at the restaurant, before tips. This offer is non-negotiable and begins immediately, Caspian said. Should Miss Ashenvale choose to accept, she will leave with me tonight. Should she refuse, I will ensure that she receives glowing references and financial compensation sufficient to sustain her for the next 6 months while she seeks other employment. He finally turned to look at her. The choice, however, is entirely yours. Every eye in the restaurant swiveled to Lyra. She stood there in her threadbare uniform, her chipped nail polish, her second-hand shoes with the worn soles. Stood there with $43 to her name and absolutely nothing left to lose. Why, ma'am? She asked. Her voice sounded very small. Because I wronged you, Caspian said, and then softer, his expression unreadable. And because I suspect your life is about to become considerably more complicated. You'll need resources, protection, answers to questions you don't even know to ask yet. And you're offering all that out of the goodness of your heart? His smile was sharp and sad all at once. I don't have a heart, not one that beats anyway, but I do have power, wealth, influence, and a vested interest in understanding what you are. He extended a hand toward her. So what do you say, Lyra Ashenvale? Do you accept? She should say no. Should walk away from this insane, impossible situation and find some other job, some other way to survive. But she was so tired of surviving, and that hand, pale and steady and wrapped in expensive shirt sleeves, was the first thing anyone had offered her in years. Lyra crossed the dining room. Her legs felt like they were moving through water. When she reached Caspian, she didn't take his hand immediately. Instead, she looked up at him. At this creature who claimed to be a vampire king, who had humiliated her and then praised her in equal measure. I want triple that salary, she said, 600,000. And I want it in writing before we leave this restaurant. Someone behind her made a strangled sound, but Caspian threw back his head and laughed. It was the first real unguarded expression she'd seen from him, and it transformed his face from beautiful to devastating. Done, he said. You drive a fierce bargain for someone who was making minimum wage an hour ago. I learned fast. I'm beginning to see that. He produced a phone from his pocket, sleek, expensive, probably cost more than her last car, and made a call. Seraphine, draw up an employment contract, personal assistant position, 600,000 annually, full benefits, signing bonus of, he glanced at Lara. How much do you need? For your father's medical bills and anything else pressing? Lyra's throat tightened. How much? 12,000, she whispered. Maybe 15 to be safe. $20,000 signing bonus, Caspian said into the phone. Have the contract delivered to Celestial Restaurant within the hour. Yes, the restaurant. Don't ask. He ended the call. There, in writing as requested. Lyra's chest felt tight. She might be hyperventilating. This is insane. Yes, Caspian agreed. But then, so is breaking a vampire's jaw on your first encounter. I think we're well past sanity at this point. The contract arrived 45 minutes later, delivered by a woman in a suit that probably cost more than Lyra's entire wardrobe. Tall, elegant, with auburn hair, and eyes that had the same silvery sheen as Caspian's. This is the one, the woman asked Caspian, looking Lyra up and down with barely concealed curiosity. This is Lyra, Caspian corrected. Show respect, Seraphine. Seraphine's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline, but she bowed her head slightly. My apologies. The contract, as requested. She handed over a leather portfolio. Lyra read every word. She was exhausted and overwhelmed, and pretty sure she was having some kind of breakdown. But she wasn't stupid. The contract was surprisingly straightforward. Employment terms, salary, benefits, termination clauses. There was a confidentiality section that was more extensive than the others, full of language about discretion and non-disclosure. The confidentiality bit, Lyra said, tapping the page. This is about the vampire thing. Seraphine and Caspian exchanged glances. Yes, Caspian said. Our existence is not public knowledge. It needs to remain that way. Why? Because humans fear what they don't understand, and fear makes them dangerous. His voice was matter of fact. We've learned over the centuries that it's simpler to hide in plain sight, to use our wealth and influence to move through your world undetected. And if I told someone after signing this, then the contract becomes void, and you would face legal consequences, Caspian said. But more than that, you would face consequences from the court. We protect our secrets, Lyra, fiercely. It should scare her. Maybe it did. But Lyra was thinking about her father's next medication bill, about the 12-block walk home in the cold, about the endless grinding exhaustion of working herself to death just to stay in one place. She picked up the pen Seraphine offered and signed her name at the bottom of the contract. Excellent, Caspian said. Now, let's get you out of here. Bernard appeared as they were heading toward the exit, wringing his hands. Mr. Nightshade, I must again apologize for... The failure was mine, not yours, Caspian cut him off. This restaurant will be compensated for the disruption. Expect a transfer tomorrow. He paused. Also, your head chef is stealing from you. The one who works Tuesday and Thursday nights. Check his orders against actual inventory. Bernard's eyes went wide. But how did you... I noticed things. Caspian's hands settled on the small of Lyra's back, guiding her toward the door. Good evening. The night air was sharp and cold when they stepped outside. A car was waiting. Black, sleek, probably German, definitely expensive. The driver opened the door without a word. Lyra hesitated at the curb. I don't have anything. My apartment. All my stuff. We'll handle it, Caspian said. Tomorrow you can return with security to collect whatever you want to keep. Tonight you're coming with me. You need rest, food, and then we need to talk about what happens next. What you are, Lyra corrected softly. Yes, he gestured to the car. Please, I promise you're safe. Whatever else I am, I keep my word. Lyra slid into the car. The leather seats were butter soft and smelled like money. Caspian settled in beside her, and the door closed with a whisper-quiet click. As the car pulled away from the curb, Lyra watched the restaurant recede in the side mirror, the place that had consumed her life for the past 6 years, that had ground her down to nothing. getting smaller and smaller until it was just another lit window in a city full of them. No regrets? Caspian asked quietly. 1,000 regrets, Lyra said, but not about leaving. She looked at him, really looked at him. This impossible creature with his perfect face and his ancient eyes and his promises of answers she wasn't sure she wanted. What am I? Well, I wish a guy in. He asked her, really, what do you think I am? Caspian was quiet for a long moment. His expression was difficult to read in the dim light of the car. I think, he said finally, that you're the answer to a question I didn't know I was asking. I think your mother was running from something when she disappeared into the human world. And I think whatever she was running from is going to come looking for you now that you've revealed yourself. Revealed myself by punching you. Exactly. So what do? We find out the truth, Caspian said, about your mother, about what you are, about why your blood doesn't react to vampire toxin and why you can break bones that shouldn't break. He turned to look at her fully, and then we decide what comes next. The car glided through the city streets, past buildings that gleamed with wealth Lyra had only ever seen from the outside, past people living lives she'd never imagined for herself. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Good, Caspian said. Fear means you're paying attention. It means you understand that your life just changed completely. Did yours? He considered the question. Yes, I think it did. The moment you hit me, something shifted. I can't explain it yet. But yes, everything changed. The car pulled up to a building in the financial district, all glass and steel and understated elegance. The kind of place Lyra had walked past 100 times without ever imagining she'd step inside. Welcome home, Caspian said, at least for tonight. Lyra looked up at the building, at her reflection in the car window, tired eyes, cheap uniform, chipped nail polish. Tomorrow, she'd wake up in a world where vampires were real, and her mother had been something other than a school teacher from Nebraska. Tomorrow, she'd start learning what it meant to be whatever she was. But tonight, she was still just Lyra Ashenvale, 30 years old, newly unemployed, recently assaulted a customer, and somehow, impossibly, on the edge of everything changing. She took Caspian's offered hand and stepped out of the car, into her new life, into the truth, into the unknown. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the Obsidian Tower. Lyra stepped out of the private elevator into a space that didn't feel real. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a glittering cityscape that stretched to the horizon. Furniture that belonged in museums. Fresh flowers, night-blooming jasmine, she recognized the scent from her grandmother's garden, filled crystal vases on every surface. It was beautiful, impossibly beautiful. And Lyra felt like an imposter standing in the entrance with her threadbare coat and worn shoes. You'll stay here tonight, Caspian said, shrugging out of his suit jacket. In shirt sleeves, he looked slightly less intimidating. Slightly. There are 4 guest rooms. Choose whichever you prefer. The kitchen is fully stocked. Help yourself to anything. He moved to a bar cart and poured amber liquid into a crystal glass. Didn't offer her any. She noticed. Where will you be? Lyra asked. I have matters to attend to. Calls to make. He took a sip of his drink, watching her over the rim. Your presence tonight has complicated things. The fact that you broke my jaw in public, that you showed strength beyond human capability. There will be questions, concerns. From other vampires? From the court, from those who maintain the balance between our world and yours. He set down his glass. I'll return before dawn. Because you'll burn up in sunlight? Because I prefer the night. His lips quirked. Sunlight is uncomfortable but not fatal. Most of the mythology is nonsense. We do need blood. We are stronger, faster, harder to kill than humans. We do live for centuries if nothing violent ends us first. And yes, there are courts and kings and politics that would make your human governments look simple. Lyra's head was spinning. She moved to the windows, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. Below, the city sprawled in every direction. Millions of people going about their lives completely unaware that vampires existed. That she might be half of one, whatever that meant. My mother, she said quietly. If she was like you, why did she hide it? Why live as a human? That, Caspian said, is one of many questions I intend to answer. But not tonight. Tonight you need rest. Real rest. Not the exhausted collapse you've been calling sleep for the past 3 years. Lyra turned to face him. How do you know about... I can hear it in your heartbeat. See it in the shadows under your eyes. He crossed to her, and Lyra's breath hitched as he stopped just behind her. close enough that she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from his skin. You've been running on empty for so long, you've forgotten what it feels like to be full. His voice dropped lower. I will find out what happened to your mother. I will discover what you are. And I will ensure you're protected while I do so. These things I promise you. Why? Lyra turned to face him. You're a king. What am I to you besides a curiosity? I don't know yet. His hand rose, hesitated, then very gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so unexpectedly tender that Lyra's throat tightened. But when you hit me tonight, when you stood there in your worn uniform with your chipped nail polish and looked at me without fear, I felt something I haven't felt in 200 years. What? Interest. His thumb traced the curve of her jaw, feather light. You made me curious, Lyra Ashenvale. You made me want to know your story, and that is a rare and precious thing. Lyra should step back, should put distance between herself and this creature who had spat on her mere hours ago. But his touch was gentle now, almost reverent, and she was so tired of being alone. Stay, she heard herself whisper, just for tonight. I don't want to be alone in this massive place. Something flickered in Caspian's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or pleasure. I'll stay, he said, but you need to eat first. When's the last time you had a real meal? Lyra tried to remember. I had a protein bar before my shift. That's not food, that's survival. He took her hand, the one with the chipped nail polish, the one that broke his jaw, and led her toward the kitchen. Come, I may not eat, but I remember what humans need, and you, Lyra, need to be cared for. The kitchen was enormous, all marble and stainless steel and appliances that probably cost more than a car. Caspian opened the refrigerator to reveal enough food to feed a family for a week. I don't even know what half this stuff is, Lyra admitted. Then we'll experiment. Well, Caspian pulled out ingredients with surprising confidence. I was human once, a very long time ago. I remember cooking, the pleasure of creating something with your hands. Lyra watched him work, too exhausted and overwhelmed to do more than perch on a bar stool. He moved with economical grace, chopping vegetables with a knife that probably cost more than her security deposit, setting water to boil for pasta. What were you like, she asked, when you were human? Caspian's hands stilled for just a moment. Angry, ambitious. I was the third son of a minor lord. No inheritance, no prospects. So I went to war. He resumed chopping. I died on a battlefield in what's now Ukraine, bled out in the mud at 24 years old. A vampire found me in my last moments. She offered me a choice, death or transformation. You chose transformation. I did, and spent the next century learning to regret it. He slid pasta into boiling water. Vampirism is a gift and a curse, Lyra. We gain power, longevity, strength. We lose warmth, daylight, the ability to create life. We lose our humanity piece by piece until we forget what it was like to care about anything beyond power and survival. Is that what happened to you? Yes. He didn't flinch from the truth. I became cruel, calculating. I built an empire of blood and fear. I took the crown of the northern bloodlines by killing the previous king in single combat. For centuries, I've ruled with absolute authority, and no one has dared to challenge me. He looked up from the pan where vegetables sizzled in olive oil. Until tonight, when a human waitress broke my jaw and reminded me what courage looks like. Lyra's cheeks heated. I wasn't being courageous. I was being stupid. Sometimes they're the same thing. He plated the pasta, creamy carbonara with perfectly cooked vegetables, and set it in front of her. Eat all of it. The first bite was heaven. Lyra hadn't had food this good since before David got sick. Since before every penny went to medical bills that couldn't save him anyway. She ate, and Caspian watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked between bites. I'm trying to remember the last time I cared whether someone ate. He tilted his head. I think it was 1823. There was a human girl who worked in my household. She was ill, wasting away. I had my people nurse her back to health. He paused. She reminded me of my sister, the one I had when I was human, who died of fever when she was 12. Do you still think about her? Every day. His voice was soft. Memory is what keeps us human, Lyra. Even after we've lost everything else, we have memory, and sometimes that's enough. Lyra finished the pasta and felt more grounded than she had in months. Fed, warm, safe, and possibly. Come, Caspian said, offering his hand again. I'll show you to a room. He led her down a hallway lined with art that was probably priceless. The guest room he opened was bigger than her entire apartment had been. The bed looked like something from a magazine. Crisp white linens, about 1,000 pillows. A duvet that was probably made of clouds. "There's clothing in the closet," Caspian said. "It might not fit perfectly, but it'll do for tonight. Bathroom is through there. Take a bath if you'd like. The tub is rather spectacular." Lyra turned to him, suddenly aware of how strange this all was. This impossible night, this creature who was cruel and then kind, this offer that was too good to be true. "Thank you," she said, "for the food, the contract, all of it." "Thank you," Caspian countered, "for reminding me that even kings can be wrong." He reached out, and this time his hand cupped her cheek fully. His thumb brushed away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. "Sleep well, Lyra. Tomorrow, your new life begins." He was turning to leave when she caught his wrist. His skin was cool under her fingers, smooth as marble. "Stay," she said again. "Please, just sit with me until I fall asleep. I don't want to be alone." For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then slowly he nodded. Lyra changed in the bathroom. She know. Found soft pajamas that were only slightly too large, and crawled into the massive bed. The sheets were the softest things she'd ever felt. Caspian settled in a chair beside the bed, his long legs stretched out in front of him. In the dim light from the bedside lamp, he looked less like a monster and more like a man. A tired man with old eyes and older pain. "Tell me something true," Lyra murmured, her eyes already drifting closed. "Something you haven't told anyone in a long time." "I'm lonely," Caspian said quietly. "I have power and wealth and subjects who fear me, but I'm so lonely I've forgotten what warmth feels like." "Me too," Lyra whispered. "I've been lonely since David died. Since before that even. Since I stopped being a person and became just someone trying to survive." "You're a person," Caspian said. "A remarkable one. Don't let the world convince you otherwise." Lyra wanted to respond, but sleep was pulling her under like a tide. The last thing she was aware of was Caspian's cool hand covering hers on the blanket, a gesture of comfort from someone who'd forgotten how to give it. And for the first time in 3 years, she slept without nightmares. Lyra woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The restaurant, the confrontation, the revelation that vampires were real and she might be one of them. She sat up, heart pounding, and found a note on the bedside table. "Gone to make arrangements. Coffee in the kitchen. Seraphine will arrive at 10 to begin your training. Make yourself at home. C." The handwriting was sharp and elegant, like its author. Lyra checked her phone. 9:47 a.m. She'd slept for almost 12 hours. The bathroom was as spectacular as promised. She showered quickly, found clothes in the closet that fit surprisingly well. Jeans, a soft sweater, even undergarments still in packaging. Everything in her size. In the kitchen, she found not just coffee, but an entire breakfast spread. Pastries, fruit, yogurt, juice. A small card propped against the coffee pot read, "Wasn't sure what you'd like, so I got everything." Something in Lyra's chest clenched. When was the last time someone had anticipated her needs? When was the last time someone cared enough to try? She was working her way through a croissant that tasted like butter in heaven when the apartment door opened. Seraphine entered, looking impeccable in a tailored pantsuit. "Good morning," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "I trust you slept well." "I did, actually." Seraphine set down the bag she was carrying, designer, Lyra noticed, though she didn't recognize the label. "I brought a few additional things to tide you over until we can do proper shopping." Caspian was very specific about ensuring your comfort. There was something in the way she said Caspian's name, without the honorific, without the deference. "You're close to him," Lyra said. "You're not just an employee. I've served the Northern Court for 5 centuries. Seraphine pulled items from the bag, more clothing, toiletries, a laptop. "Caspian is my king, but he's also—" She hesitated. "He's also something like a friend, as much as creatures like us can have friends." "So you're a vampire too?" "I am." Seraphine's eyes met Lyra's directly. Auburn hair framed a face that could have been anywhere from 25 to 1,000. "And I'll admit, I was skeptical when Caspian called me last night. He's been different lately. Restless, cruel, even by our standards. I worried he was losing himself to the darkness that takes us all eventually." She studied Lyra with obvious curiosity. "Then he met you. I hit him. You challenged him. There's a difference." Seraphine's lips quirked. "He's been insufferable for decades. Someone needed to remind him that power doesn't excuse cruelty. Lyra took the clothing, running her fingers over soft denim. He said I might be part vampire, because of my mother. It's possible. Seraphine's expression grew serious. There are stories, old ones, about vampires who tried to live among humans, who fell in love with them. The offspring of such unions are rare. Most don't survive to term. Those who do are usually stillborn or die in infancy. She gestured at Lyra. But occasionally one lives, and they're unlike anything else in our world. What are they like? Strong, fast, resistant to our weaknesses, but not fully vampire. They can walk in daylight without discomfort, eat human food, live as humans do, but they also have our gifts: enhanced senses, accelerated healing, longevity. Seraphine paused. If that's what you are, Lyra, you're valuable beyond measure, and also in considerable danger. The croissant turned to dust in Lyra's mouth. Danger from what? From those who would use you, study you, breed you to create more of your kind. Seraphine's voice was flat, matter of fact. The vampire world is not kind. We're predators by nature. Something as unique as you would be seen as either a weapon or a resource. With fear, cold and sharp, slid down Lyra's spine. And Caspian? What does he see me as? I don't know, Seraphine admitted, but I know he's protecting you. That means something. He doesn't protect frivolously. The training began immediately. Seraphine took Lyra to a private gym in the building's basement. State-of-the-art equipment. Padded floors, no windows. First, Seraphine said, we need to see what you can actually do. She moved faster than Lyra could track. One moment standing 10 feet away. The next, right in front of her, hand raised to strike. Lyra's body reacted before her mind could catch up. She blocked, deflected, stumbled backward, but didn't fall. Good, Seraphine said. Instinct. That's what kept you alive when you hit Caspian. Your human mind said don't, but your vampire blood said survive. They trained for hours, Lyra learning to access strength she didn't know she had, speed that felt like flying. Senses that picked up heartbeats from across the room. She failed more than she succeeded. Got knocked down again and again, but each time she got back up a little faster. You're adapting quickly, Seraphine said during a water break. Faster than any halfling I've heard of. That suggests strong vampire lineage. My mother, Lyra said. Can you help me find out about her? Seraphine's expression shifted, became guarded. What do you know about her? Almost nothing. Her name was Aurelia Ashenvale. She died when I was 5. My father said it was a car accident, but Lyra frowned. He never liked to talk about her, and there are no photos from before I was born. No records. Nothing. Aurelia, Seraphine repeated softly. That's an old name. A vampire name. You know something. I might. Seraphine pulled out her phone, typed something, and her face went very still. Lyra, I need you to describe your mother, what you remember. She was beautiful. Dark hair, gray eyes like mine. She smelled like jasmine. She sang to me at night. The memories were fragments, worn smooth by time. She was sick a lot, or that's what my father said. She'd stay in her room with the curtains closed for days at a time. Seraphine turned her phone screen toward Lyra. Is this her? The photograph was old, faded, a formal portrait of a woman in an elaborate dress. But the face, Lyra's coffee cup slipped from her fingers, shattered on the floor. The woman in the photograph was her mother. Exactly her mother, down to the small scar on her left eyebrow from where 5-year-old Lyra had accidentally hit her with a toy. That's her, Lyra whispered. That's my mom. Where did you get this? From the court archives. Seraphine's voice was very careful. This is Princess Aurelia of the Eastern Bloodlines, daughter of Elder Thaddeus. She disappeared in 1992, 32 years ago. The room tilted. The official story, Seraphine continued, was that she was killed, murdered by rivals from the Southern Court, but her body was never found. The court went to war over it. Thousands died, and then nothing. The conflict ended. Life moved on. She became a ghost story. Lyra's legs gave out. She sat hard on the gym floor, staring at the photograph, at her mother's face. She wasn't killed, she said numbly. She ran away. It appears so, and she ran to the human world, changed her name, married a human, had you. Seraphine crouched beside Lyra. Do you understand what this means? You're not just any halfling, you're royalty, Princess Aurelia's daughter, direct bloodline from one of the most powerful vampire families in existence. Why would she run? Why hide? I don't know, but I intend to find out. Seraphine helped Lyra to her feet. Come on, we need to tell Caspian. Caspian returned at sunset. Lyra heard him before she saw him, the private elevator, the sound of his footsteps. She'd been pacing the living room for hours, her mind spinning with revelations. He appeared in the doorway, still in his suit from last night. His eyes found her immediately. Seraphine told me, he said, about your mother, about who she was. Princess Aurelia. Lyra's voice sounded strange to her own ears. My mother was vampire royalty, and she abandoned her entire world to live in Nebraska and teach elementary school. She didn't abandon anything, Caspian said quietly. She escaped. He moved to the bar cart, poured himself a drink with steady hands. I've been making calls, asking questions. No one wanted to talk about Princess Aurelia. The subject is sensitive, but I pulled rank, demanded answers. He turned to face her. Your mother was being forced into an arranged marriage, a political alliance between the Eastern and Northern courts. The groom was chosen for his power, not his character, and by all accounts, he was cruel, violent. Your mother refused, tried to break the engagement, but her father, Elder Thaddeus, wouldn't allow it. The alliance was too important. Lyra's hands clenched into fists. So she ran. She ran, and she hid so well that even vampire trackers couldn't find her. She lived as a human for, he calculated, 12 years, 13? Long enough to fall in love, have a child, build a life. Until someone found her. Caspian's expression darkened. Yes, someone found her. And in 1999, 25 years ago, Princess Aurelia died. The official record says natural causes. But vampires don't die of natural causes, Lyra. Not at her age. Not when she was barely 300 years old. Murder, Lyra whispered, almost certainly, and covered up. Made to look like a human death so no one would investigate. Caspian set down his glass with careful control. Someone wanted her dead, someone powerful enough to hide the truth. Lyra's mind was racing. The court presentation tomorrow. You said I have to go before the Vampire Council. They're going to find out who I am. They're going to test your blood. Yes. And when they do, they'll see the royal markers. They'll know you're Aurelia's daughter. Caspian crossed to her, his expression serious. Which means whoever killed your mother might come after you next. Then why are we going? Because if we don't, you'll be marked as a rogue element, hunted. You'd spend the rest of your life running. His jaw tightened. I won't let that happen. We go to the court. We present you properly. And I claim you under my protection. Officially, publicly. In a way that makes it clear that anyone who touches you will have to go through me first. Lyra looked up at him, at this ancient creature who'd been cruel to her one night and was now offering to stand between her and the entire vampire world. Why are you doing this? She asked again. Really? Because when I looked at you last night, after you hit me, after you stood there, radiating defiance and courage, I saw myself. The version of myself I was before I let power corrupt everything good in me. His hand rose, fingers hovering near her face but not quite touching. You reminded me what it means to fight, to refuse to bow, and I will not let the world break that in you. I'm already broken, Lyra whispered. I've been broken for years. No. His fingers brushed her cheek now, cool and gentle. You're scarred, battered, exhausted, but not broken. Broken things don't fight back. And you, Lyra Ashenvale, are a fighter. The words unlocked something in her chest, something tight and painful that had been lodged there since David died, since the world became too heavy to carry. She stepped into Caspian's space and wrapped her arms around him. He froze. For a heartbeat, he was utterly still. Then slowly his arms came around her, holding her carefully, like she might shatter. Thank you, Lyra said into his chest, for seeing me, for not treating me like I'm nothing. You could never be nothing. Caspian murmured into her hair. You're extraordinary. You just don't know it yet. They stood like that as the last light faded from the sky. A vampire king and a woman who might be more than human, finding comfort in each other's brokenness. The court presentation happened 3 days later. 3 days of training with Seraphine. 3 days of learning to control her emerging abilities. 3 days of Caspian making calls, pulling strings, preparing the way. And 3 days of something else. Something growing between Lyra and Caspian that deepened with each passing day. Became something neither could deny. He brought her coffee every morning. Remembered exactly how she liked it. He listened when she talked about her past, her pain. He shared pieces of his own history, Stories from 8 centuries of life. Some beautiful, most brutal. They didn't talk about the attraction, the way her breath caught when he was near, the way his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. But they both felt it, heavy as gravity, inevitable as dawn. On the morning of this presentation, Lyra stood in front of the mirror in a dress Seraphine had chosen. Deep emerald that made her skin glow, hair styled, makeup subtle but polished. She looked like someone else, someone who belonged in Caspian's world. But when she looked at her hands, she saw the calluses, the evidence of 6 years carrying trays, the chip in her nail polish she'd never quite managed to fix. You ready? Caspian appeared in the doorway and Lyra's breath caught. He was dressed formally, all black, perfectly tailored. He looked every inch the king he was. No, Lyra admitted. I'm terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He crossed to her, adjusted a strand of her hair with gentle fingers. Remember what we discussed. Answer their questions honestly but briefly. Don't volunteer information. And if anyone tries to intimidate you, look them in the eye and don't flinch. Exactly. His hand settled on her waist. You're Princess Aurelia's daughter, royal blood. You bow to no one except by choice. I'm a waitress. You were a waitress. Now you're something else entirely. His eyes met hers in the mirror, ready to find out what. Lyra took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, lifted her chin. Yes, she said, let's go meet the vampires. The obsidian hall was exactly what it sounded like. A massive building that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black stone. Ancient, imposing, built to inspire awe and fear in equal measure. Inside, it was all Gothic grandeur. Vaulted ceilings, stone columns, torches that burned with blue-white flame that couldn't be natural. Vampires filled the great hall, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all inhumanly beautiful, all terrifying. They turned to watch as Caspian entered with Lyra at his side. The weight of their attention was crushing. Lyra felt it like physical pressure, but she kept her chin up, kept her eyes forward, walked beside Caspian like she belonged there. They approached a raised dais where 5 vampires sat in throne-like chairs. The Elder Council, ancient, powerful, and looking at Lyra like she was a particularly interesting insect. The center vampire spoke first, a man with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. King Caspian, you've brought the anomaly. I've brought Lyra Ashenvale, Caspian corrected, and there was steel in his voice. And she will be addressed with respect. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Of course, the silver-haired elder said, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. Miss Ashenvale, we are most curious about you. Our reports say you have vampire characteristics despite having no bite mark, no transformation. This is unprecedented. So I've been told, Lyra said, proud that her voice didn't shake. We would like to study you to understand what you are. Another elder spoke up, dark-haired, sharp features, something cruel in his smile. For the good of all our kind. No, Caspian's voice cut across the hall. Miss Ashenvale is not a science experiment. She's under my protection. Any examination of her nature will be done with her full consent and comfort, or not at all. You would deny the court's authority? The silver-haired elder's eyebrows climbed. I would prioritize basic decency over scientific curiosity. Caspian's hand pressed more firmly against Lyra's back. Miss Ashenvale has rights. She will be treated with dignity. This is not negotiable. The dark-haired elder leaned forward. His eyes glittered with something dangerous. And if we demand access to this creature? Lyra felt Caspian go very still beside her. When he spoke, his voice was soft, deadly. Then you'll have to go through me first. The threat hung in the air. Around them, vampires shifted nervously. Whatever else he was, Caspian was the Northern King, powerful enough to back up his words. Perhaps, a new voice said, we can reach a compromise. A woman glided forward from the crowd. She was stunning, pale as moonlight, hair like spilled ink, dressed in crimson that made her look like a wound come to life. Vesper Ravenna, the Southern Queen. King Caspian is right that the young woman deserves courtesy, Vesper continued, her accent thick and Eastern European. But the court's concerns are also valid. We've never encountered someone like her. Understanding her nature benefits us all. She smiled at Lyra, showing just a hint of fang. Perhaps Miss Ashenvale would consent to a simple blood test. Nothing invasive, just enough to determine what she carries in her veins. It was a trap, Lyra could feel it, but refusing outright would make her look guilty, afraid. I'll consent, Lyra said, ignoring Caspian's sharp inhale. But I choose who takes the sample, and I want the results shared with me immediately, not hidden away for court scholars to pore over. Vesper's smile widened. Clever girl. Yes, those terms are acceptable. The blood draw was quick and clinical. Seraphine administered it with gentle efficiency while Caspian hovered nearby, radiating protective menace. Results will take an hour, Seraphine murmured. Maybe less. We have equipment here that's more sophisticated than anything human medicine has access to. The wait was excruciating. Lyra was given a chair on the edge of the hall while vampires conducted other business. Territory disputes, requests for audience, the mundane politics of immortal beings. Caspian stayed beside her, a silent sentinel. When Seraphine returned, her expression was carefully neutral. She carried a tablet that she handed to the silver-haired elder. The elder read, his eyes widened. He looked up at Lyra. This is remarkable. What is it? Caspian demanded. Her blood carries markers of vampire origin, but not from a bite or transformation. These are genetic, inherited. The elder's voice rose with barely contained excitement. She's a Dampier, half vampire by birth, and not just any Dampier. He turned the tablet so the whole council could see. The genetic markers match Eastern bloodline royalty, specifically... He paused and something like shock crossed his ancient face. Specifically Princess Aurelia's line. Direct descent. The hall erupted in noise, vampires pressing forward, trying to see, to get closer. Caspian moved in front of Lyra, his body a barrier between her and the crowd. Back, all of you, now. A Dampier, Vesper breathed, her eyes gleaming. Princess Aurelia's daughter. Do you understand what this means? She could bridge our world and the human one. Could produce offspring with either species. She's invaluable. She's a person, Caspian snarled, not a breeding prospect. But surely you see the potential. What I see is a woman who's been through hell and deserves peace, not to be turned into a commodity. His voice dropped to something dangerous. Anyone who approaches her without permission will answer to me personally. And trust me, you don't want that. The crowd backed off. Even Vesper retreated a step, though her expression remained calculating. The silver-haired elder stood. The court recognizes Lyra Ashenvale as Dampier, Princess Aurelia's heir. She is unique and will be afforded appropriate protection. His gaze sharpened. However, she must also be educated in our ways, taught to control her gifts, integrated into our society properly. She'll be educated, Caspian agreed, under my supervision, in my court. You claim her for the northern bloodlines? I do. The words were formal, binding. Lyra could feel their weight even if she didn't fully understand them. So witnessed, the elder intoned. Lyra Ashenvale is under the Northern King's protection and authority. Any who challenge this will face the court's judgment. It was over. Lyra could feel it, the subtle relaxation of tension, the way vampires began to disperse. Caspian turned to her, his expression fierce and oddly tender. Come, we're leaving. They were almost to the exit when Vesper intercepted them. A word, King Caspian. Make it brief. Vesper's eyes flicked to Lyra. I meant privately. Anything you say to me can be said in front of Lyra. The queen's smile was sharp. Very well. I'm curious about your sudden attachment to this girl. You've never been the sentimental type. People change. Vampires don't, not really. We are what we are. She circled them slowly, predatory. Unless, her smile widened. Oh, how delicious. You're attracted to her. Caspian's jaw tightened. That's none of your concern. It's very much my concern if the Northern King is making decisions based on emotion rather than logic. Vesper stopped in front of Lyra. Tell me, little Dampier, do you have feelings for our cold, cruel king? Lyra met her gaze steadily. I think he's more than his reputation suggests. And he thinks you're more than a waitress with chipped nail polish. Vesper laughed. How romantic. How human. She leaned closer. Be careful, dear. Men like Caspian don't love. They possess. And possession can be its own kind of prison. Is that what happened to you? Lyra asked before she could stop herself. Someone possessed you? Made you this bitter? For a moment, genuine fury flashed across Vesper's face. Then she smiled again, cold and empty. No, dear. I learned the truth about love the hard way. I hope you don't have to do the same. She swept away, leaving them alone. Caspian's hand found Lyra's. Don't listen to her. She's been hurt, and now she hurts others. It's what we do when we live too long. Is it? Lyra looked up at him. Is that what you do? I did, before you. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Now I'm trying to remember how to be something other than cruel. They drove back to the penthouse in silence. Lyra's mind was spinning with everything she'd learned. She was Dampier, half vampire, Princess Aurelia's daughter, unique, valuable, a commodity, unless Caspian kept his promise to protect her. What does it mean, she asked as they rode the elevator up, that you claimed me for the northern bloodline? It means you're under my official protection, my responsibility. No other bloodline can touch you without my permission. He leaned against the elevator wall, looking exhausted. It also means you're tied to me, to my court. You can't just leave, not without formal release. So I'm trapped. No, you're safe. His eyes met hers. There's a difference. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Lyra stepped out, moving to the windows automatically. The city glittered below, beautiful and distant. I need you to understand something, Caspian said behind her. I didn't claim you because I want to own you. I did it because it was the only way to guarantee your safety. But if you want to leave, truly leave, I'll find a way to release you, even if it costs me politically. Lyra turned to face him. Why would you do that? Because you deserve freedom, choice, all the things I took for granted when I was human and forgot about after I became this. He crossed to her, stopping just out of reach. I won't be another person who traps you, Lyra. You've been trapped enough. Something in her chest cracked. This creature, this vampire king who'd spat on her and then given her everything. He was offering her freedom, which made her realize she didn't want it. I don't want to leave, she said quietly. You don't have to decide now. Take time. Figure out what you want. No, Lyra closed the distance between them. I know what I want. I want to understand what I am. I want to learn about this world. And I want, she took a breath. I want to know you, the real you, not the cruel king or the protective benefactor. Just you. Caspian's expression did something complicated. You might not like what you find. Let me be the judge of that. He laughed, soft and surprised. You're fearless, utterly fearless. I'm terrified, Lyra corrected, but I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. Then let me make you a different offer. Caspian took her hand, holding it gently. Stay, not as my employee or my ward. Stay as my equal. Learn what you are, discover your power, and let me away. He faltered, and for the first time, he looked uncertain. Let me try to be worthy of your courage. Caspian, I don't know if I can love, he said. I don't know if what I feel is love, or obsession, or just the desperate clinging of a drowning man to something beautiful. But I know that when I look at you, I feel more alive than I have in centuries. And I want, God, I want everything with you. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Lyra reached up, cupping his cold face in her hands. Then take it. Take everything I'm offering. He kissed her. It was gentle at first. Testing. Careful. Like he was afraid she might break. But Lyra pressed closer, and the kiss deepened. His arms came around her, pulling her against him. He was cold, but not unpleasantly so. Solid. Real. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Caspian rested his forehead against hers. This is dangerous, he murmured. You're Dampier. I'm vampire. There are rules about this. Politics. Complications. Then we'll deal with them, Lyra said. You're the king. I'm half vampire. Together, we're unprecedented. Let them try to stop us. His answering smile was fierce and wild. God help anyone who tries. And in that moment, standing in a penthouse overlooking a city that didn't know vampires walked among them, Lyra Ashenvale understood something fundamental. Her life had changed completely, irrevocably. But for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. And she wasn't going to let anyone, human or vampire, take that away from her. 3 weeks passed in a blur of training and discovery. Lyra learned to move like water, to strike like lightning, to hear a heartbeat from 3 rooms away and smell fear on someone's skin. Seraphine pushed her harder each day, and each day, Lyra rose to meet the challenge. But it was the nights that mattered most, the nights when Caspian would return from his endless political meetings and find Lyra waiting. When they'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. When he'd teach her about vampire history, and she'd tell him about her life before, the small human life that felt like it belonged to someone else now. The nights when the distance between them grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. They didn't rush, didn't label what was happening, but the connection deepened with each passing day, became something neither could deny, something that felt dangerously close to love. On the 21st night, Lyra woke from a nightmare screaming. She was back in the hospital, watching David waste away, holding his hand as machines beeped their futile warnings, smelling antiseptic in death in the particular scent of hope dying by degrees. Strong arms came around her before she could fully wake, cool skin against her feverish panic. A voice murmuring words she couldn't quite hear but understood anyway. Safe. You're safe. I'm here, Caspian. She turned into his embrace, buried her face against his chest, and let herself break. Really break. For the first time since David's funeral, she let the grief out. All of it. The loss and the loneliness and the grinding weight of 3 years spent just trying to survive. He held her through it all, didn't try to fix it or minimize it or tell her it would be okay. Just held her while she shattered and slowly, piece by piece, began to reassemble herself into something new. When the storm passed, Lyra pulled back enough to see his face. His eyes were wet, not with tears. Vampires didn't cry water, but something darker, thicker, blood tears. You're crying, she whispered. I haven't cried in 300 years. His thumb brushed her cheek, wiping away her own tears. I'd forgotten it was possible. Why now? Because your pain is my pain. And I would take it all if I could, every moment of suffering, every loss. I would carry it for you if you'd let me. Lyra kissed him then, not gentle or testing, but fierce, claiming, choosing. And this time when they came together, it wasn't just comfort or desire, it was something else entirely. Something that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. Afterward, lying tangled together in sheets that cost more than her old apartment, Lyra traced patterns on Caspian's chest. I love you, she said, simply, without fear. He went very still. Lyra, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. I love you. Not because you saved me or gave me this life, but because you see me. All of me. The broken parts and the strong parts and everything in between. And you don't flinch. Caspian caught her hand, pressed it against where his heart would be if it still beat. I love you too, he said. I didn't think I could. Didn't think I had the capacity left after so many centuries of nothing. But you made me remember what it feels like to want someone's happiness more than my own. To be terrified of losing something precious. He pulled her closer. I love you, Lyra Ashenvale. Completely. Devastatingly. And I will protect you with everything I am. She fell asleep in his arms, feeling safer than she'd felt in years. The nightmare came back 3 hours later, but this time it was different. This time it wasn't David in the hospital bed. It was her mother. Lyra woke gasping. The dream fragments clung to her consciousness like cobwebs. Her mother in a white room, surrounded by machines, people in lab coats taking samples. Her mother's voice, weak and desperate. Don't let them take my daughter. Promise me. Don't let them use her like they used me. Just a dream, Lyra whispered. But her hands were shaking. Caspian stirred beside her. What's wrong? Nothing, just another nightmare. But he was already sitting up, his eyes sharp and focused. Tell me, she did. Every detail she could remember, the white room, the lab coats, her mother's desperate plea. When she finished, Caspian was silent for a long moment. Then he reached for his phone. Seraphine, I need you to access the Elder Council archives. Everything about Princess Aurelia's disappearance. Medical records, laboratory logs, anything that might have been sealed. He listened. His expression grew darker. Do it anyway. Use my authority if you have to. And Seraphine, be careful. If what I suspect is true, this goes deeper than we thought. He ended the call and turned to Lyra. Your dream, it might not have been just a dream. Dampiers sometimes experience genetic memory, fragments of their vampire parents' experiences encoded in their DNA. You think my mother was in a lab, being experimented on? I think your mother might have been running from something worse than an arranged marriage. His jaw tightened. I think someone was trying to use her, to study her. And when she escaped, they never stopped looking. The implications settled over Lyra like ice water. You think whoever killed her is still out there? Yes, and now that you've revealed yourself to the court, now that they know Princess Aurelia had a daughter, he cupped her face gently. I think you're in more danger than we realized. Seraphine arrived at dawn with files, digital and physical, centuries of records that should have been sealed, but weren't. Not to someone with Caspian's clearance. They spread everything across the dining table. Lyra's hands trembled as she picked up the first document. Medical assessment. Princess Aurelia of Eastern bloodlines. Date October 1991. Presiding physician. Dr. Alaric Draven, head of biological research. Alaric, Lyra breathed. The elder from the council. The one with the cruel smile. Seraphine nodded grimly. Keep reading. Lyra did, and with each page the horror grew. Her mother had been more than just engaged. She'd been selected, chosen specifically for a breeding program designed to create Dampier offspring. The vampire court had been dying out for centuries, unable to reproduce, unable to create new vampires through turning because the process had become less and less successful over time. They needed fresh blood, hybrid vigor, and Princess Aurelia, with her strong bloodline and compatible genetics, had been the perfect candidate. She'd refused. Of course she'd refused, and when diplomatic pressure didn't work, they'd tried force. The medical reports detailed attempts at artificial insemination, hormone treatments, procedures that made Lyra's stomach turn. Her mother had endured it for 2 years, and then she'd escaped. She ran, Lyra whispered. She ran and she hid and she found my father and she had me. The normal way, the human way, because it was her choice. And Alaric never forgave her for it. Caspian's voice was ice and fury. He lost his perfect test subject, his chance to crack the code of Dampier creation. So he waited, watched, and when he finally found her, he didn't finish, didn't need to. Seraphine pulled up another file. There's more. After Aurelia's supposed death, Alaric didn't stop. He continued the research. Used samples he'd collected during those 2 years of testing, tried to create Dampiers artificially. She turned her laptop screen toward them. Lyra wished she hadn't looked. The images showed creatures that might have been human once, might have been vampire, but were now something else, something wrong. Twisted bodies, eyes that held too much awareness for the amount of pain they were clearly in. Failed experiments, Seraphine said quietly. 8 of them, kept alive in a facility beneath the Obsidian Hall. Alaric's secret shame. His failed attempts to recreate what Aurelia did naturally. Lyra's coffee turned into ash in her mouth. Those things are alive, right now? According to these logs, yes. Maintained in stasis, controlled through pain compliance. Seraphine's expression was haunted. I've been part of this court for 500 years, and I never knew. None of us knew. Because Alaric is head elder, Caspian said, he has the authority to seal records, to operate in the shadows. And he's been waiting for this. Waiting for you. He turned to Lyra and she saw genuine fear in his ancient eyes. You're what he's been searching for. Natural-born Dampier with royal blood. If he gets his hands on you, if he can figure out what makes you viable when his creations weren't, he could make an army. Lyra finished the thought. An army of creatures like me. Strong enough to walk in daylight, fast enough to hunt humans, loyal only to him. Exactly. The apartment was silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of the city waking up. Then Lyra's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Miss Ashenvale, Elder Alaric Draven requests your presence at a formal challenge. Blood duel with Queen Vesper Ravenna. Tomorrow night, Obsidian Hall. Attendance is mandatory for all recognized Dampiers. Refusal will be considered rejection of court authority and handled accordingly. It's a trap, Seraphine said immediately. He's using court law to force you into a situation where he can study you, test your limits, maybe even capture you. Caspian was already on his phone. I'm calling the council. This is illegal. He can't just... Yes, he can. Lyra's voice was calm, too calm. Blood duels are part of vampire law. Any elder can challenge a new court member to prove their worth. I looked it up last week. She set down her phone, met Caspian's eyes. I'm going to accept. Absolutely not. Listen to me. She stood, moved to him, took his hands. If I refuse, I'm marked as rogue, hunted. We spend the rest of our lives running. But if I go, if I face this, I prove that I'm not afraid, that I deserve my place in this world. You could die, or I could win, and when I do, Alaric loses his leverage. He can't claim I need protection or study if I've proven I can defend myself. It's too dangerous. Everything about my life is dangerous now. Lyra's grip tightened. I'm the daughter of a woman who was tortured and hunted and murdered because she dared to choose her own path. I won't hide. I won't let fear make me small. If Alaric wants a demonstration, I'll give him one. Caspian looked at her for a long moment, Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight it had almost hurt. "If you do this," he said against her hair, "you do it on our terms. Seraphine trains you every waking hour. I'll be in the arena watching. And if Alaric so much as breathes wrong, I will end him. Publicly. Laws be damned." "Okay. And Lyra, win. Whatever it takes. Come back to me." "I will, I promise." The next 24 hours were brutal. Seraphine pushed Lyra past every limit she thought she had. Taught her not just to fight, but to read an opponent. To find weaknesses. To turn defense into offense in the space of a heartbeat. "Vesper is 750 years old," Seraphine said, circling Lyra in the training room. "She's fought in wars you can't imagine. Killed enemies you couldn't count. She is fast and strong and absolutely ruthless." "Great, very encouraging." "But," Seraphine stopped, caught Lyra's eyes. "She also has honor. Blood duels have rules. First blood ends it, or surrender. She won't kill you unless you give her no choice. And if Alaric orders her to, then she'll have to choose between her honor and her politics." Seraphine's expression was grim, "and I honestly don't know which she'll pick." They trained until Lyra's muscles screamed, until her hands bled, until she could barely stand. And then they trained more. Caspian brought food, made her eat even when she was too tired to lift the fork. Sat with her while she soaked in a bath hot enough to scald a human, letting her lean against him while he worked tension from her shoulders with careful hands. "I'm scared," she admitted as the sun set on the day of the duel. "I'd be worried if you weren't." He kissed the top of her head. "Fear and courage aren't opposites, Lyra. Courage is being afraid and doing it anyway, and you are the most courageous person I've ever known." "What if I lose?" "Then I'll burn the entire court to the ground getting you back." He said it so matter-of-factly that she almost laughed. "But you won't lose, because you're fighting for something Vesper hasn't had in centuries." "What's that?" "A reason to live beyond survival. You have love, hope, a future you want to see. That makes you more dangerous than any ancient warrior." Lyra turned in his arms, kissed him slowly, thoroughly, like she was memorizing the taste of him. "I love you," she said, "win or lose, live or die. I need you to know that you gave me my life back. You made me remember what it feels like to be more than just tired and sown and empty." "Lyra, let me finish," she cupped his face. 3 weeks ago, I was nobody. Nothing. A waitress working herself to death for scraps. And now I'm here. I'm strong. I'm loved. I matter. That's because of you. So thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Caspian's blood tears fell freely now. I love you more than I've loved anything in 800 years. Come back to me. I will. She sealed the promise with a kiss. The obsidian hall was packed. Every vampire in the territory had come to watch. The arena had been prepared in the center of the great hall, a circular space marked with silver. Ancient symbols that glowed with pale light. Lyra entered wearing combat clothes Seraphine had chosen. All black, flexible, no jewelry, nothing that could be used against her. Her hands didn't shake. Her heart beat steady and strong. She was ready. Vesper was already in the arena. She'd abandoned her elegant dresses for something similar to Lyra's outfit. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe braid. Her pale skin seemed to glow against the black. She looked like death personified. "Lyra Ashenvale," Vesper's voice carried across the hall. "You accept this challenge?" "I do." "And you understand the terms? First blood or surrender ends the duel. Death is permitted but not required. Do you agree?" "I agree." Vesper's lips curved, just slightly. "Then let us begin." The crowd fell silent. Alaric stood on the dais with the other elders. His smile was sharp and hungry. He thought he'd won. Thought this would prove Lyra needed his guidance, his protection, his research. He was wrong. The signal came, a bell that rang through the hall like judgment. Vesper moved first. Fast. Impossibly fast. Lyra barely blocked the strike, felt the impact travel up her arms, stumbled back. Vesper pressed the advantage. A flurry of blows that Lyra could barely track. Claws that came within inches of her throat. The crowd murmured, already writing her off, already assuming the outcome. But Lyra wasn't just defending. She was watching, learning. Every time Vesper struck high, she favored her left side. Every time she feinted low, she exposed her right shoulder for a fraction of a second. Weaknesses. Small ones. But there. Lyra waited, absorbed punishment. Let Vesper think she was outmatched. And then she struck. A faint low that made Vesper defend right, then up high on the left where her guard was weakest. Lyra's fist connected with Vesper's ribs, hard enough to crack bone. The queen stumbled. Genuine surprise flashed across her face. "Good," she said, and smiled. "Very good." The fight continued, faster now, more intense. But something strange was happening. Every time Vesper landed a blow, it wasn't quite where it should have been. Every time she created an opening, it was a little wider than necessary. Every time she spoke, it was to correct Lyra's form. "Keep your guard up. Don't telegraph your strikes. Use my momentum against me." She was teaching. Right there in the middle of a blood duel, teaching Lyra how to fight her. When they came together in a grapple, close enough that no one else could hear, Vesper whispered against Lyra's ear, "Your mother saved my life once, 300 years ago. I was captured by enemies, tortured, left for dead. Aurelia found me, healed me, hid me until I was strong enough to escape." Her grip tightened. "I owe her everything, and I pay my debts." Understanding crashed over Lyra. "You're letting me win. I'm giving you the tools to win. What you do with them is up to you." Vesper shoved her back, raised her voice so the crowd could hear. "You fight well for a halfling, but not well enough." She attacked again, but this time Lyra was ready. She saw the pattern now, the rhythm Vesper was creating, the spaces she was leaving, the opportunities she was offering. Lyra took them. A strike to the solar plexus that doubled Vesper over, a sweep that took her legs out. A move Seraphine had taught her just yesterday that put Vesper on her back with Lyra's hand at her throat. One scratch. That's all it would take. First blood. Lyra met Vesper's eyes, saw approval there. Permission. She raked her nails across Vesper's collarbone. Not deep, but enough. Blood welled, dark and thick. First blood. The arena went silent. Lyra stood, offered her hand to Vesper. The queen took it, let herself be pulled to her feet. "I yield," Vesper announced. Her voice rang clear. "Lyra Ashenvale has won. The duel is complete." The crowd erupted, some in approval, most in shock. Alaric's face was a mask of fury. Vesper leaned close to Lyra one more time. "Your mother would be proud. As am I. Welcome to our world, princess." Then she swept away, leaving Lyra standing alone in the center of the arena. Caspian was there in seconds, pulling her into his arms. "You did it. God, you did it." "Vesper let me win." "No, she gave you a chance. You took it. That's all anyone can ask." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You were magnificent." The moment of victory was shattered by a sound like thunder. The floor of the arena cracked, split. Something was rising from beneath. No, not something, multiple somethings. 8 figures emerged from the darkness below. They might have been human once. Might have been vampire, but they were monsters now. Twisted, wrong. Eyes that glowed with sickly light and mouths full of too many teeth. Alaric's failed hybrids. "Enough of this charade." Alaric's voice cut through the chaos. He stood at the edge of the arena, his hand raised, controlling the creatures through some means Lyra couldn't see. "You want to play at being strong, little Dampier? Let's see how you fare against true power." "This is against every law," Caspian started. "I am the law," Alaric roared. "I am head elder." "I created these from your mother's stolen blood, Lyra Ashenvale. They were meant to be the future of our race, but they were flawed, imperfect, because I didn't have the final piece." He smiled, cold and terrible. "You." The hybrids attacked, not just Lyra, everyone. Vampires scattered as the creatures tore through the crowd. Screams filled the hall, blood sprayed across ancient stone. Caspian moved to protect Lyra, but one of the hybrids caught him across the chest, sent him flying into a column hard enough to crack it. "Caspian!" Lyra's scream was raw. He was getting up, already healing, but too slow. The hybrid was on him again. Seraphine appeared from nowhere, engaged another hybrid, moved with deadly grace. But she was one against many. And Vesper? Vesper was protecting the crowd, herding vampires to safety, fighting off 2 hybrids at once. They were going to lose. Lyra felt it, the inevitability. These creatures were too strong, too many. Too wrong, and it was her fault if she'd never revealed herself, if she'd stayed hidden. No, the thought came from somewhere deep, somewhere primal. This wasn't her fault, this was Alaric's. This was the fault of a man who saw people as things, who saw her mother as a tool, who saw Lyra as nothing more than genetic material. And she was done letting men like that define her. Something inside Lyra broke. Or maybe it unlocked. Heat flooded her veins. Not painful, but overwhelming. Like every cell in her body was waking up after decades of sleep. Her vision sharpened. The world slowed. She could see everything, every movement, every heartbeat, every weakness. And she could feel power. Raw and ancient and absolutely hers. Royal blood, Princess Aurelia's legacy. Not just in her genetics, in her very soul. Lyra moved, faster than she'd ever moved before. Faster than should have been possible. She caught the hybrid attacking Caspian by the throat, lifted it off its feet like it weighed nothing, slammed it into the ground hard enough to crater the stone. It didn't get up. She spun, saw another hybrid diving for Seraphine's exposed back, was there before it could strike, drove her fist through its chest and out the other side, felt its twisted heart stop in her hand. The remaining 6 hybrids turned toward her, recognized the threat. Lyra smiled, and for the first time she understood why vampires were feared. "Come on," then she said, "let's finish this." They came at her all at once. She tore through them like paper. Every move precise, every strike lethal. The power singing through her veins wasn't just strength, it was knowledge. Muscle memory inherited from her mother. From every vampire in her bloodline going back centuries. She knew how to fight, how to kill, how to survive. The last hybrid fell at her feet, twitching, dying. Lyra didn't feel pity, only cold satisfaction. She turned to Alaric. He stood frozen on the dais, the controller in his hand useless now, his perfect weapons destroyed. "You killed my mother," Lyra said, walking toward him, slowly, deliberately. "You tortured her, used her, and when she dared to escape, when she dared to choose her own life, you hunted her down like an animal. She was mine. She was never yours." The words came out as a roar. She was her own person, a woman, a mother, a fighter. "And you took her from me because you couldn't handle the fact that she said no." Lyra reached the dais. Alaric stumbled back. For the first time in his 1,200 years, he looked afraid. "I should kill you," Lyra said. "Would be justified. The court would approve it." She let him see his death in her eyes, let him understand how close he was to oblivion. Then she smiled. "But I won't, because death is too easy, too quick. You don't get to escape what you've done." She turned to the assembled court, to the elders who watched with a mixture of horror and awe. "I claim my right as Princess Aurelia's heir. I demand judgment on this man for crimes against our kind, for creating abominations, for murdering royalty, for using his position to conduct illegal experiments." The silver-haired elder stepped forward. His expression was grave. "The evidence is clear. The punishment for such crimes is exile. Eternal exile to the Deadlands, where no vampire may offer aid or comfort." "No," Alaric's voice cracked. "Please, I did it for our people, to save our race. You did it for power." Vesper's voice cut across his pleading. "And now you'll have an eternity to regret it." The sentence was carried out immediately. Alaric was stripped of his position, his wealth, his status. Guards took him away screaming, to a place worse than death, to centuries of isolation and madness. Justice, not vengeance. Lyra's mother would have approved. The aftermath was chaos. Injuries to tend, damage to repair, bodies to dispose of. Lyra let herself be checked over by court physicians. Let Seraphine fuss. Let Vesper bow her head in respect as she left. But all she wanted was Caspian. She found him in a private room. He was already healed, already perfect. But his eyes, when they met hers, were haunted. "I almost lost you," he said. "When those things attacked, when I couldn't get to you fast enough. But you didn't lose me. I'm here. I'm alive. We won." She crossed to him, let him pull her into his arms, let herself finally shake with the aftermath of adrenaline and fear. "What you did out there," Caspian murmured, "the power you displayed. Lyra, do you understand what that means? That I'm stronger than we thought? That you're royal, true royal, not just blood, but power. You awakened your full inheritance tonight." He pulled back to look at her. "You could claim a throne if you wanted, lead a bloodline, command armies. I don't want any of that. What do you want?" "You. Simple, honest. I want a life with you. I want to learn what I am. I want to honor my mother's memory by choosing my own path. And I want to never let anyone make me feel small again." Caspian's smile was soft and devastating. "Then that's what you'll have. All of it. For as long as you want it. Forever. Forever." 6 months later, Lyra stood in the nursery of the penthouse, one hand resting on her swollen belly. The baby kicked, strong, insistent, and she smiled. Your grandmother's name was Aurelia, she said softly to the life growing inside her. She was a princess and a teacher, and the bravest woman I never got to know. The room was bathed in twilight. Through the windows, the city sprawled below in a tapestry of light and shadow. A world that didn't know vampires walked among them. A world Lyra was now part of. A world she was changing. She walked to the dresser and pulled out a worn piece of paper. The letter Seraphine had found 3 months ago, hidden in a locket that had belonged to her mother. Lyra had read it so many times the creases were starting to tear. But she read it again anyway. My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, then I am gone. And I am so sorry. I wanted to give you a normal life. A safe life, away from the politics and cruelty of the vampire world. But I know now that safety is an illusion. They will find me eventually. They will kill me for the crime of choosing my own path. But they will not find you. Your father will protect you, raise you as human, give you the childhood I never had. Know this, my precious girl. You are not broken. You are not defective. You are not the sum of what others say you should be. You are a bridge between two worlds, human and vampire, mortal and eternal. You carry the best of both inside you. Don't let anyone tell you that makes you weak. It makes you powerful beyond measure. Use that power to heal, not divide, to protect, not destroy, to love, not hate. Be brave, be fierce, be exactly who you were meant to be, and know that I loved you from the moment I knew you existed. Every choice I made was to give you freedom, the freedom to choose your own life, your own path, your own destiny. You are my greatest achievement, my brightest hope, my beautiful daughter. I will love you forever, Mom. Lyra folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the drawer where she kept her most precious things. Your grandmother gave me freedom, she whispered to her unborn daughter, and I'm going to give you love, safety, a world where you never have to choose between who you are and who you're allowed to be. The door opened behind her. She felt Caspian before she saw him, the cool presence that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat. You okay? He asked softly. I am. She turned to face him, and her heart did that stupid flutter it always did when she looked at him. Her husband, the vampire king who'd been cruel and then kind, who'd seen her when she was invisible. I was just thinking about her, about everything she went through to give me this life. Caspian crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her, around both of them. His hands settled on her belly, and the baby kicked against his palm. She'd be proud of you, he said, of what you've become. I hope so. Lyra leaned back against him. I hope she knows that her sacrifice wasn't for nothing, that I'm happy, that I'm loved, that I'm going to give our daughter everything she wanted for me. Our daughter is going to be loved, Caspian said, protected, free to be exactly who she is, half vampire, half human, all ours. Lyra smiled. 3 months ago, they'd been married in the Obsidian Hall, vampires and humans mixing for the first time in centuries. Seraphine had cried actual tears, a miracle in itself. Vesper had presented them with the portrait of Princess Aurelia, a connection to the past, a reminder of sacrifice. And 2 months ago, the court physicians had confirmed what Lyra already knew in her bones. She was pregnant, the first vampire dampier child born in 400 years. The miracle that proved vampires weren't dying out, that there was hope for the future. What should we name her? Lyra asked. Aurelia, Caspian said without hesitation. For your mother, for the woman who gave up everything so you could have this. Aurelia Nightshade, Lyra tested the name, felt it settle into her heart like it had always belonged there. Perfect. They stood together as night fell fully, the city lights coming on one by one, and Lyra thought about how far she'd come. From a waitress with chipped nail polish and $43 to her name, to a queen carrying the future of 2 species, to a woman who had found love in the most unexpected place. They'd called her worthless, broken, nothing. But she was the daughter of a princess, the wife of a king, the mother of a miracle, and her story, her legacy, was just beginning. They said I was nothing, Lyra whispered. You were never nothing, Caspian said against her hair. You were always everything. You just needed someone to see it. We saved each other. Yes, we did. And in that moment, with her husband's arms around her and her daughter kicking inside her, and the memory of her mother's love wrapped around her heart, Lyra Ashenvale understood the truth. Once upon a time, An arrogant vampire king had spat on a poor waitress because her nail polish was chipped. She'd broken his jaw, and it had changed everything. Not because he saved her, but because she saved herself first. And in doing so, she saved them both.